All right, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. In this live stream, I'm going to start discussing about a recent report came from A16Z. A16Z is a venture capitalist firm, Andreessen Horowitz, if you are not familiar with them. And they talked about the 16 changes to the way enterprises are building and buying generative AI. So there is a lot to capture in this video, and I have tried to summarize it in the way it's feasible for all of you to understand. Right? So let's dive right in from the very first topic. What they are talking about is resourcing. And when they say resourcing, particularly they are talking about budgets are growing dramatically and they are here to stay. If we look at, and then this is again coming from their own data, the data which says that in 2023, enterprise would have spent about $7 million per company on generative AI. That is going to grow to $18 million on an average. Now, that means budgets are skyrocketing. That's a good thing in a way. But what does it mean for you, for us as a whole, right? That means as enterprises are going to apply more and more generative AI, yes, those companies will see a lot of productivity gain. But at the same time, there is also a demand for AI talent because they would not be able to do it on their own. Either they will have to hire consultant, they will to hire full-time employees, they will have to hire companies who are doing this work on behalf of them, and many more things. That means you, individual or a business, has an advantage of staying in generative AI, upskilling yourself, and be prepared to support whatever that $18 million per company this new and this large enterprises are going to spend. Right, moving on quickly. The next one, again, still on the budget, but they are saying that leaders are starting to reallocate AI investment into recurring software budget lines. What does it mean? Is in 2023, if we look at it, most of the enterprises were spending money as a proof of concept in AI. So some sort of a investment they were doing to support AI activities. But most of these enterprises have been spending millions and millions of dollars into the software services, whether they are buying software, they are building software, and then many more other things. And it's part of their budgetary cycle. So within that budgetary cycle, they are adding AI as a part of their software budget lines. What does it mean? It could be two things. One is definitely the productivity gain, which we are seeing it already. But that productivity gain may result in a lesser hiring. Why I would say that? So think about the customer support agent. Like we have seen Klarna, for example, has almost like 2/3 of their customer support agent is AI chatbots. Now, similar to Klarna, there are many enterprises who are replacing customer support agents with chatbots. In some cases, companies are almost like gaining 90% uptick. And when I say 90% uptick, that means 90% of that chatbot is taking the load from human. That means we may not see those jobs coming back. So the agent doing that work, they may not see that work done by them. Most likely what end up we will seeing is that customer support agent who was doing the customer services may end up doing something else. At the same time, when the recurring software budget lines are added, particularly aligned to the AI, the other IT projects are going to get suffered. What do I mean by other IT projects? Imagine you had, let's say, some mainframe modernization project going on. Now, maybe there is a mainframe in your company, and then that mainframe may get modernized at some point, but quite likely AI is going to take over that budget, and the mainframe may remain mainframe for a time being. So there are many other projects like those are not getting enough funding because AI is taking over on those fundings. All right, so moving on to the next one is more about ROI. Now, still, return on investment is important for many of the enterprises, but the leaders still don't know how to find out the ROI from this investment. So it might take a couple of years before actually someone realizing that, hey, they are spending too much money on AI. Maybe they are giving away this money to OpenAI or to Anthropic or to Amazon or who knows, right? But it will take few years before they realize that they are overspending on AI. What does it mean for you? That means if you are a consultant, for example, it might take a while for them to realize that they are spending too much time or money on these consultants and paying more. But at the same time, there is a likelihood that they may not realize that they have like thousands of tools now. Maybe I'm looking at 2 years, 3 years ahead now. But let's say in 2, 3 years, they have thousands of tools, thousands of services, which is doing AI and generative AI. Now, not every tool would gain the investment what they have made. So they will need to figure it out as they are learning along the way to see what kind of ROI they are gaining as a result of investment, what they're making into the AI. The next one is about talent. And particularly when these enterprises are implementing and scaling the generative AI beyond where they are, they don't have in-house talent. They don't have talent who can hit the API and write the software. They may have software engineers, but they may not have AI engineers who can build that thing for them. They may not have ML engineers who can run their LLM ops or AI ops. They may not have people who can fine tune the model. They may not have people who can do the RAG, for example. They may have people who can do a simple prompting, but the entire cycle of prompt engineering, they may not have that. So what does it mean for you? There is a clear demand for AI talent. And all of these companies are looking at those talents. Whether you are an individual contributor doing coding, maybe you are in a business and knowing technology or a little bit of AI, combining with your business skills, they are looking for that kind of talent as well. And also the leaders who can lead such talents, right? So all the way from ground level to the executives levels, there is a clear lack of people who can lead the AI project the way enterprises want. And if you are one of that person who has gained some of those skills, you can ask for a higher dollar. Certainly there is a demand, and why not ask for that money? All right, so that's on the talent aspect when we are looking at overall functionality. The next revelation what they have is about enterprise trending towards multi-model. Now, there is a difference. There is another concept called multi-modality. That means text, image, audio, video, all combined. But here we are talking about multiple models. And when we say multiple models, that means customers, or in this case, these enterprises, are not sticking to a particular model. They are still experimenting. They are experimenting on OpenAI. They are experimenting on Anthropic. They are experimenting on Cohere. They are experimenting on Llama and many other things which has come across in last 6 to 9 months. What does it mean is there are some projects are using OpenAI ChatGPT. Some projects are using Claude. Some projects are using Mistral. Some projects are using Llama 2 and so forth. So that means we will continue to see this kind of behavioral changes as the enterprise is adopting AI in their organization, and there is no clear winner when we are looking at LLM. And in my opinion, we will see at least 3, maybe more, models playing that role in an enterprise. Think of like database 20 years ago, right? We had Oracle, SQL Server, then MySQL, then PostgreSQL, and then the whole slew of NoSQL databases. If you ask in any enterprise, probably they have at least 5, maybe 10, depends on who you ask, databases in their environment. Similar story might happen in coming years when we are looking at LLMs, and combination of open source and closed source is going to combine as a part of the multi-model aspect what they're talking about. But as we go into that multi-model future, it says that OpenAI is still the leader, maybe for time being. We should see that graph shrink a bit, and we should see the other bars go higher, and then maybe there is a level playing field. Most likely we will see Anthropic, Google, and OpenAI, all three kind of competing with each other in terms of the market share for a proprietary model. And model like Llama 2 or Mistral would compete in the open space arena. And then who knows, maybe third model may come in coming weeks to coming months, and may take over the Llama or the Mistral of the world and compete each other with some of the proprietary models. Right, so we would see that kind of a split in coming weeks to coming months, where the field is kind of level playing. Going further is they identified that open source is booming. Now, open source, some of you might be familiar with models like Llama 2 or Mistral. They are open source model. What does it mean by open source? It's you own the model. If you change anything, you own the model as a company. The intellectual property or the model rights, it's with you. Comparatively speaking, if you are using ChatGPT, if you are using Claude, if you are using Google Gemini, they are proprietary models. And by using those models, you actually don't own any IP. So many of these enterprises are actually looking to own IP or the intellectual property. And that is the reason they are investing into open source model. And probably that's the reason open source is booming. But that means you, for individual or an organization or a business who is into the making money, it would be a good time to learn about how to fine tune an open source model. Particularly for the enterprises use cases, most of them will end up fine-tuning these open models when they're talking about open source models. So it's not late. If you want to learn more about fine-tuning, stay tuned. We'll talk about fine-tuning in the coming episodes and then whatnot. But open source is booming. The next trend is about cost and the open source, right? Yes, there is a cost involved when you are building or tuning or training the model. It's not simple. But at the same time, when you are consuming the model from any provider, the proprietary provider, there is still a risk. And that risk could be in terms of the security, the privacy, and the enterprises are still not ready to take on that risk of sending their sensitive data, their sensitive information outside of their own bubble, right? Could be within their data center, could be within their own private cloud. They don't want to send the data out to these model providers. So doing AI outside of their trusted circle is something it's not ready for an enterprise point of view. So again, going back to that, security and privacy is still a thing. And that means fine tuning. If you can learn how to do fine tuning, that would be a very good skill for you to get a ticket to the enterprise companies. The other aspect is about the data as well, right? So similar to what we are talking about data earlier, same applies here, where the use cases, the sensitive data, they are not ready to move it to the cloud or move it to the AI, which is not hosted by them. The next one they are identifying is instead of building the model from scratch, most of these enterprises wants to fine tune this model. What does it mean? So some of you might be familiar with many companies in 6, maybe 9 months ago or a year ago were obsessed with building a model from scratch. Now, there are few architectures exist which kind of prohibits or inhibit depends on how you look at it, of not forcing anyone to build model from scratch. For example, Bloomberg trained their financial model from scratch, the Bloomberg GPT. I doubt if any other organization would take endeavor like this of building a model from scratch, because now there are many open models or open architecture available, which allows them to take the model as is and fine tune to the domain specific, in which domain they might be operating, or a task specific, depends on which task they want to perform or want this particular model to excel at a particular task. That is where we see that trend. Now, if you are a startup like Mistral or many other startups who are actually in the business of building the LLMs, you still want to build those LLMs, right? Because you want to make change in the world. You want to be the next Mistral, go for it. But if you are not Mistral, if you are not a startup who are core business is building an LLM, I think it's time to adopt what exists in the open source community and build on top of it. What does it mean for some of you who has either a business or you are an individual and looking to gain some money? Particularly skill for the machine learning people who knows machine learning enough where they can start a model or take a model, let's say Mistral 7B for example, and retrain that model continuously, or maybe completely retrain that model using your own data set or company's own data set. There is real demand for that kind of skills who can do entire model building using the existing model but infusing with company data. So if you don't have that kind of skills and you want to learn more, stay tuned. We'll talk about it in the upcoming weeks. The next one is on the cloud. Now, cloud providers, particularly the Azure, GCP, and AWS, all three have an offering around generative AI. Azure, as you know, has tied up with OpenAI for the ChatGPT. AWS and GCP, AWS has a multiple provider like Anthropic, Cohere, AI21, and few others, and Amazon's own model. Same way for Google. I believe Google now also offers Anthropic Cloud along with the Gemini and some of the other models. But that means customer who has the data within the cloud, they are trying to utilize the services what cloud providers are offering instead of they doing their own things. Some are doing it, maybe they are doing it for the open source model. But what does it mean for you? So the mean for you as a business or as an individual is you want to stay connected to those cloud, whether it's AWS, GCP, Azure, from your skills point of view. So that means demand for the people who knows Bedrock from Amazon point of view, or people who knows SageMaker, or people who knows like Google Vertex. The demand for those people is going to grow because more and more enterprises are going to adopt this kind of services. Instead of doing a self-management, they're going to rely on what's offered by the cloud provider. So the next one is about early to market. And what do we mean by early to market? Early to market is particularly important where take an example of Claude releasing the context window of 200,000 token. That was very important to many customers because the size of the context window makes a lot of sense. Now, Google Gemini released with 1 million token window. Now, I still am skeptical in terms of whether 1 million token window is good enough. And would it solve the purpose of messy in the middle? Because quite many of the research shows that when your context length is too high, like 1 million or even 10 million, LLM may only pay attention to the beginning or the end, but not in the messy middle. So again, we'll still have to see what kind of outcome comes out from a 1 million token window. But the point is that newer features are actually welcome by these enterprises. That means you still need to keep learning of what these changes are happening around you and you want to adopt and adapt those changes or to those changes and build your skills around it. The next one is the model performance. And when we say performance, quite often it's depends on the public benchmark what these model creators are providing. But quite often enterprises are doing their own benchmark, and maybe those benchmarks are internal to these enterprises. Like looking at the customer churn is could be a one benchmark, and then based on that they are adapting that, okay, this model is able to serve better for the customer churn versus the other model had a lack of response, or maybe it was delayed response, and based on that we don't want to take one versus the other model. So what does it mean for you? That means invest your time and energy into handful of models, not just one model. That means if you learn how to do, let's say, prompt engineering with ChatGPT, that's great. But also add some skills in your tool belt on how to do the same prompt engineering with Anthropic's Claude. Why? Because the prompts for ChatGPT will not work on Claude. The Claude takes the prompt differently than ChatGPT. So think about how you want to align yourself from the skills point of view, and you can continually learning around those skills. But that means your learning should not stop when you are looking at some of this new breed of innovations. All right, the next one is about the performance again, but they are thinking that performance is going to converge being closed source and open source are going to come closer to each other when it comes to the performance. What does it mean for you? Again, is same applicable. Keep learning around the new things as the new things are evolving. Right now it's Llama 2 and Mistral being in the open world, and Anthropic's Claude, Google Gemini, and OpenAI might be on the closed source. In month or in a 3 month, this may change, right? So keep your eyes open and be open about what the change might be coming. The other thing what enterprises are doing is they are thinking around options. And when I say options, they are building some sort of an API layer or a shim layer on as a part of their organization, where any applications which wants to connect or do a generative AI function, they let these applications go through that internal layer, and within that internal layer, they decide which model to choose. Maybe this use case is meant for ChatGPT. Maybe this use case is meant for Claude. Maybe this use case is meant for Llama 2. So they are creating that kind of shim layer. At the same time, they are creating options. That means if tomorrow Llama 2 is the best of the best, how can they easily switch from Claude or OpenAI's ChatGPT to Llama 2 and maybe save some money? Because Llama 2 is typically open source. Being open source, you are paying less. So plan to switch from model A to model B. When I say plan, you being an individual or you being a business, you have to think in that direction, that how you can move from one to the other aspect. And if you can show your transferable skills as an individual, if you are able to show that you are able to move from ChatGPT to cloud in a second, not in a second, but you can transfer your skills from A to B, you will be in demand. The next one is on build versus buy. Now, not many enterprises are buying the applications. What do I mean by applications? The end user applications. There are many end user applications out there, which is powered by generative AI. But enterprises are thinking around building those applications instead of simply buying. Let's take one example. I'll take Jasper as an example. Again, by no means I'm saying no to Jasper. Amazing tool for writing functionality. Would this enterprises be thinking of buying that Jasper as a service, or would they be building a similar service meant for their own enterprise? In that scenario, they are thinking of building it, not buying it. What does it mean for you? So it's possible that we may see some decline in software businesses. And when I say software businesses, the software which you might be receiving from the third party, those who are shipping you the software, or maybe they are selling you as a software as a service, as a SaaS model, we are likely to see some demand going down, because many of those software which exist in the enterprises, they are building it using AI. And quite likely, if not today, in few months, that functionality will get replaced by whatever tools or the software enterprises are building in their own way, and the SaaS functionality may completely get removed, right? So there is a likelihood that we will see that kind of decline. But what does it mean for individuals, particularly those people who can build the software using AI? That means you know how to operate in AI, you know how to hit an API and create a software using an API, or you know how to apply a RAG, or maybe at certain extent fine tuning. If you know those concepts, are going to help you tremendously in building these softwares for enterprises, and that means you will be able to ask for more money. The other one is there are trend where customers are migrating to production. And when we say customers are migrating to production, there are some use cases where they are still testing, which is mainly internally. And for externally, they are more cautious on how they can take it to the production. But there is a trend where some small use cases will eventually go out internally first, test it out with no brand reputation damage, and no dollar damage and whatnot, those kind of situations, and then roll it out to the external customers. And the last thing what they are saying is the total spend on the model APIs and the fine tuning. When we say model API, that means you are building a software using this ChatGPT API, a Claude API, or a Bedrock API, and or you are fine-tuning these models. That is going to grow to over $5 billion run rate by end of this year. That's massive. What does it mean for you? If you are on the fence of starting an AI business, it's a very good time to start that business. Even on a start as a side hustle. If you are selling to startup or anybody else, maybe you ought to change your strategy and sell it to enterprises, particularly in the AI space. They are very hungry right now. With that, to conclude, those who are still skeptical, AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. The second thing, for individuals or even for businesses, learn and be curious and keep enhancing your skills and keep raising that bar. The other thing, in early 2023, we thought that OpenAI is like God, and they're gonna monopolize this entire AI business. But we don't see that. In less than a year, we see that it's not just OpenAI in the market. There are many competition, and that trend is keep evolving every day. We do anticipate the open source and the proprietary models to coexist together. As I said, it's a very good time to start the business now. And if you are in selling, sell to those enterprises. With that, I conclude this talk. Thank you very much for those who were able to make it. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.